On our broadcast tonight, affirmative action, a major decision from a divided Supreme Court concerning one of the hot-button issues of our time. Air war, a big fight over technology and money coming to a head today. The outcome could forever change the way we watch television. City killers, like the one that hit with the force of an atomic bomb. They're happening far more often than previously thought. Tonight, a strong warning from the people who are tracking them. And Back to the Future, what we thought the future would look like. Tonight, what we got right and wrong 50 years since the 1964 World's Fair. Nightly News begins now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. Affirmative action using race as a factor in college admissions suffered a blow today when the Supreme Court, in a lopsided but deeply divided vote, said, in effect, no matter what it may have done in the past, no matter what it may accomplish, voters in the individual states have the right to end it. Like in Michigan, where voters recently did just that. Today, the court said that should be the last word. It's where we begin tonight with our justice correspondent, Pete Williams, at the court. Pete, good evening.
Brian, good evening. The justices went out of their way to say they were not ruling on the constitutionality of affirmative action itself, but this decision is new ammunition for those who do want to stop it. It's a big victory for the state of Michigan, which had affirmative action in school admissions until 2006, when 58% of state voters passed Proposal 2, amending their constitution to ban it.
Affirmative action has become corrupt and unfair.
Civil rights groups sued, saying the ban amounted to discrimination, making it harder for minority students to push for favorable admission policies. Today, voting 6-2, the court upheld the right of Michigan voters to pass the ban. Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote that while the debate on the issue may be emotional, it should not be beyond the reach of voters. Michigan's Attorney General said the ruling favors political fairness.
Is a victory for the citizens of Michigan, who overwhelmingly voted in 2006 to require equal treatment in admission to our outstanding colleges and universities.
But in a passionate dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who often says affirmative action changed her life, said the amendment rigged the political system against minorities. While the Constitution does not guarantee minority groups victory in the political process, she said, it does guarantee them meaningful and equal access to that process. Civil rights groups fear today's ruling may encourage other states to try bans of their own.
What's going to happen is what happened in Michigan, and that is a campaign of disinformation and of fear about affirmative action, a campaign that suggests that minority students are taking the place of others.
In Detroit, high school sophomore Markeith Jones says today's decision is a setback.
It complicates things more than they are already. It's creating a new era of racism. It's creating a new Jim Crow.
So counting Ohio, 8 states have now banned affirmative action, starting with California 20 years ago. And one other note, Justice Elena Kagan sat this one out, having worked on this issue when she was at the Justice Department. Brian?
All right, Pete, thanks. Pete Williams at the Supreme Court building tonight. So that was today's decision by the court. This next issue was argued and presented to the court today. And full disclosure right up top, this company is a big player in this case, along with a lot of other big names in media who are tonight, just like us, covering it as a news story. This is about something called Aereo. It delivers TV to you wherever you are by bypassing the usual players. Our report tonight from NBC's Stephanie Gosk.
Ben Allen doesn't pay for cable, and he has a message for the cable company. Good riddance.
No more cable. The only thing I'm paying for is internet.
Allen uses the online service Aereo, along with several other internet video services, slashing his once $110 TV bill in half. Aereo launched last year from a warehouse in Brooklyn and is now available in 11 cities, charging customers $8 a month to watch any broadcast TV network live or recorded. To use Aereo, you don't have to buy any new gadgets. Subscribers get online with their phones, laptops, or tablets. I've missed my daily dose of celebrity gossip with my account. I now have Access Hollywood right at my fingertips. Each account has access to a micro antenna at one of Aereo's data centers, which grabs network signals from the airwaves. Those signals feed into DVRs until the user wants to watch, and then the shows are streamed to them online. Aereo says that is no different legally than a person at home using an antenna and a home video recorder.
We've consolidated those two technologies and located them remotely so the consumer can enjoy broadcast TV as they have for a very long time.
But the broadcast networks, including NBC, say Aereo is different. They say it takes free programs on the air and sells access to them without paying for the right to do it.
Grabbing signals from over-the-air television and selling them for a profit to individual consumers. We have a technical legal term for that. It's called theft.
Cable and satellite TV companies have to pay the networks copyright fees, which is why their services are more expensive. The Obama administration has already sided with the broadcasters, but if they lose the case, some networks have threatened to pull their free signals off the air. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
The story remains hard to believe, but more came out today about the 15-year-old who stowed away in the wheel well of a 767 and somehow survived a flight from California all the way west to Hawaii. Aside from how he survived it, it does raise a natural question in the shoes-off and pat-down era of post 9/11 airport security for those of us who fly on the inside of the plane. Our report tonight from NBC's Joe Fryer.
He ended up in Hawaii, but police sources tell our NBC affiliate in Honolulu the teenage stowaway may have been trying to get to relatives in Africa. Students say the boy started attending classes at Santa Clara High School in California just a few weeks ago.
I feel like his heart was in the right place, kind of, but then his mind really wasn't in the right place.
After getting onto the tarmac at San Jose's airport, officials say surveillance video shows the boy crawling into the wheel well of a Hawaiian Airlines jet. Some struggle to believe he remained in that cramped space the entire 5-hour flight with sub-zero temps and limited oxygen. Doctors say the extreme cold may have slowed down his body, keeping him alive.
In this case, he was like an amphibian. He was like a hibernating frog. He basically was hypoxic.
Passengers who were on board that flight are now surprised to learn about the stowaway.
Say if that was anyone else with any kind of bomb or anything like that, like easily put it on the plane and ran away, like no one would have noticed.
In the wake of this breach in San Jose, there are now calls to study perimeter security at airports across the country.
A person should not be able to jump a fence and roam around a tarmac or get into an airplane without being detected.
I can tell you that San Jose is not unique. I can tell you that that could have happened at many, many airports. Maybe JFK would be an exception, maybe Logan.
As for the teen, he's still resting in a Hawaiian hospital and will soon return home to California in a less adventurous way. Joe Fryer, NBC News, San Jose.
Overseas, the tension over Ukraine has taken a dramatic new turn with a strong warning from Vice President Biden in Ukraine and delivering a pointed message directly at Moscow. Meanwhile, there is word tonight hundreds of U.S. troops are being moved to the region. Our report on all of it this evening from our Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent, Andrea Mitchell.
A standoff today in Donetsk over a flag, Ukraine's blue and yellow flag, which pro-Kiev protesters raised over a building in Lenin Square. Masked Russian supporters demanded they take the flag down. No sign the Russian militias are disarming, as all sides promised last week. The self-declared mayor of Slavansk claimed he, not Moscow, called in the troops, his retired military friends. But U.S. officials tell NBC News they have plenty of intelligence, beyond the pictures they showed yesterday, that Vladimir Putin is calling the shots. In Kiev today, Vice President Biden directed the blame squarely at Moscow.
We call on Russia to stop supporting men hiding behind masks in unmarked uniforms, sowing unrest in eastern Ukraine.
Are they Russians?
With tensions rising, the Russian militias seized an American journalist, Simon Ostrovsky, who works for Vice News and has been reporting extensively from eastern Ukraine. He had an earlier dust-up with the Russians in March. To counter Russian troops still exercising along Ukraine's border, the Pentagon is sending 600...
Stop supporting men hiding behind masks in unmarked uniforms, sowing unrest in eastern Ukraine.
Are they Russians?
With tensions rising, the Russian militias seized an American journalist, Simon Ostrovsky, who works for Vice News and has been reporting extensively from eastern Ukraine. He had an earlier dust-up with the Russians in March. To counter Russian troops still exercising along Ukraine's border, the Pentagon is sending 600 soldiers to neighboring Baltic nations for training and exercises starting in Poland tomorrow, followed by Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. John McCain, last night on Late Night with Seth Meyers, wants more U.S. muscle against Putin.
Russia is a gas station masquerading as a country. Wait, I take that back. It's a gas station run by a mafia that is masquerading as a...
Perhaps all this is why John Kerry sounded oddly nostalgic for the bad old days.
During the Cold War, it was easier than it is today. Simpler is maybe a way to put it.
Tonight, as President Obama leaves for Asia, a trip he already had to cancel 3 times before, U.S. officials are resigned to the likelihood that the Ukraine crisis will overshadow whatever the president does in Asia. Brian?
Andrea Mitchell in our D.C. newsroom tonight. Andrea, thanks. On his way on that trip to Asia, President Obama stopped in Washington State today. He spent time with families and first responders while touring the scene of devastation there after the landslide that wiped out much of an entire community. The death toll stands at 41 now. The search is continuing for 2 others still missing. And with a rising death toll, over 170 souls still missing, the anger is growing tonight after the awful ferry disaster we've been covering in the waters off South Korea, as new details are uncovered about what the captain and crew did and did not do at the first sign of trouble as they started to make their own escape from the vessel. Our report tonight from NBC's Bill Neely in South Korea.
4 of the ship's crew leaving court suspected of negligence, a charge denied by 1. We couldn't launch the lifeboats because the ship was too slanted, he says, and we told passengers to leave over the loudspeakers. Most survivors say they heard no such announcement. 9 of the ship's crew have either been arrested or charged. 1 has tried to kill himself. Investigators now say the first emergency call was made not by the crew, but within 3 minutes by a frightened boy, saying, "Save us, I think we're sinking." The boy is still missing. The senior crew, led by the captain, responsible for saving people, all survived. Most of the passengers did not. To free them from the murky waters, divers try to smash windows, but it's not easy. Well over 100 bodies have now been recovered. The laments of a father to his daughter, haunting. "My poor baby, Yesan," he cries. "What can I do? I haven't had a chance to say I love you." Other fathers are still waiting, their missing daughters around their neck, but only in a photo. Just days ago, these families were dreaming of miracles, hoping somehow their children were still alive. They're not dreaming anymore. They are utterly exhausted. New descriptions of bodies are flashed up. 108, no shoes. There are seldom any names. The parents, bent with grief already, must identify them in person. The flares shoot up for another night's searching, another night's suffering. Bill Neely, NBC News, Jindo, South Korea.
Members of the ethnic Sherpa community of Nepal are considering a climbing boycott, a strike in effect in light of the death of 13 Sherpas in the recent avalanche on Mount Everest. Since Tenzing Norgay, the Sherpa famously at the side of Sir Edmund Hillary, they've been indispensable for Everest climbers as porters and cleaners and guides and cooks. They make their living from the climbers who pump millions into the industry in that area, but Sherpas are questioning receiving such a small share and meager death benefits for the families of the fallen Sherpas. Right now, with the peak season about a month away, there are 400 climbers and 39 separate Sherpa teams on that mountain approaching the summit. A job action could bring climbing there to a virtual halt. Still ahead on our broadcast tonight, city-killing asteroids. The new data out showing far more close calls than previously thought. And what do you find?